post, which is known as a factor. Can you say that word? A factor. I'm the factor. John would be my clerk, and he would be the man that takes care of all the accounting. But he's also going to show the furs, and we have one fur that's the most important of all the furs we've got out here, and the most valuable. John's going to bring that over.
Beaver. What kind of fur is that? Beaver.
That is a beaver hide. Now, here's my question for you. And everybody's going to get to touch the furs and look at them, and then you're going to identify them for me. But we'll do that later. Okay? Here's my question for you. Where do beaver live?
Dams.
Well, they build dams. What do they live in?
Under the water.
They live in water. So it could be a pond, a stream, or a lake. What do they live in? What do they live in? They build dams. So what do they live in? They live in the water, but what's their house like? It's a giant pile of wood. And you know what it's called? It's called a beaver lodge. And it's actually, how they get in it is go underwater and then come up, and they live in there.
Yeah, I knew that.
You knew that. Well, then you should have said it. Right?
I the name.
Okay, well now you know the name. So, I want to find an active beaver site, and that is called beaver sign. And I want you to tell me what you think would make an active beaver site. What do beaver eat? What do they eat? What do they eat? They eat wood. So when they chew it, you have stakes like this with a point on the end. That's one thing that would tell us that there's an active beaver there. What do we say they build? Dams, and what do they live in?
Beaver lodges.
Beaver lodge. So we're looking for dams, beaver lodges, we're looking for chewed trees, and the thing that tells us they are active is a beaver slide. Now, how many of you guys have the opportunity to be on a water slide? A lot of you, right? A beaver slide is exactly the same thing. They go from the land and they slide down into the water. So if the beaver slide has tracks and it's muddy, that means what? There's beaver there. They're working the ground. So we're going to show you how we trap the beaver. You ready? First of all, we know the site's active, and the first thing we find is a beaver slide. This is called a bait stick. It looks like I've got mud on it, doesn't it? What it is the beaver glands called castorum. Castor is the beaver in Latin. And castorum is, okay, how does a dog mark its territory? He pees. Well, a beaver does the same thing with its glands. They rub the glands to say, this is my part of the woods. Yeah, it's a bumblebee. It'll be all right. So we take the beaver, once we've caught it, and we cut those back glands out there on the inside of the legs. We dry them, we add oil to them, and this becomes beaver medicine, castor. And we keep it in this little jar, and we attach it to our belt, and all we do is dip it in like that. Now, you can smell it, but it doesn't smell like anything. Doesn't smell like anything. John will take a round and show it to you. Now, what's a beaver doing? Well, he's walking around his neck of the woods, and he's selling. Somebody else is here, another beaver, and maybe he's trying to take my doe beaver, or maybe he's trying to take over my territory. So, I'm going to take the beaver bait, the stick, and I'm going to put it right at the edge of the water, right on the slide. Just like so. Got it? Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the trap. John's going to show you how to do that.
So, the way that you would be setting the trap, first you have a very long stick with a notch in it, right here. This is what would be known as a drown stick, for reasons that we'll come to later. So to set the trap, you go into the water, you pound the drown stick in. Now, typically you would bury it all the way up to here, but for the sake of demonstration, we're just going to there. You put the bait stick at the edge of the water, right next to the end of the slide. Alright? And what that does is that's going to catch the beaver's attention. While that happens, we have this trap right here, which is going to be just inside the water at the end of the slide.
Listen up.
Now, when the beaver hits a panel on here, the trap
Let's go around
the trigger.
so we don't.
Watch what happens.
Biting
Now.
onto its leg like this. Now, the beaver, when it gets scared, is going to go one place in particular. Where do they always go when they're scared, when they're upset, when they know there's danger? Not just the lodge, but into the water. There you go. So, when it tries to swim underwater, this ring gets caught on the notch right here. And the beaver can't return up to the surface because the chain's too short or the stick is too far down, and therefore it drowns on the drown stick.
Now, a beaver is a mammal, which means what? What is it? What does a mammal do? Go ahead, tell me.
It gives real birth to the baby.
Gives real birth. Does not bear its young with eggs. What else does it do? How does it breathe? Does it have gills or lungs? It has lungs, so it breathes air. And that's what makes it an air breather, which makes it a mammal, and that's why it drowns. Fish doesn't drown in water, does it? No, fish lives in water. So I've done my job. I've caught the beaver. I take the beaver out of the trap, and some of them weigh a lot. Some of them weigh up to 60 pounds. There's probably not a kid here that weighs 60 pounds.
I do.
You weigh 60
I
pounds.
weigh 80.
Yeah, you do. You might weigh 60 pounds.
I weigh 87.
You weigh 87. You'd be a big beaver. And beavers have, just like deer, bucks and does. So a male beaver is called a buck. A female beaver is called a doe, just like deer. So I've got that done, and I'm going to take the beaver. Maybe I caught 4 or 5 today, and I'm going to take him to John, who is, in the time period, a greenhorn. That means he doesn't really have the trapping skills that I have, and in French he'd be called a mangeur de lard. Can you say that? Mangeur de lard. And all that means is he eats pork instead of beef or buffalo. And I'm going to give that to John, and John is going to use his skinning knife.
Thank you, sir.
And he's going to show you what he does to the hide.
So, with the beaver hide, the first and foremost thing you need to do is separate the hide from the beaver. So you are going to very carefully cut away the skin. Now, after you do that, you need to make sure that you have all the little bits of fat and flesh disconnected from the rest of the beaver. So you very carefully are going to run your knife up and down the pelt. You can see there's a couple of little nicks on here where I messed up my first time. Early practice.
And that actually takes money off the beaver hide because it's not worth quite as much.
Absolutely. Sorry about that, boss.
Yeah.
Now, what you absolutely will
Dr.
never
Petty.
do is cut on the furry side. You cut through this end and you lose a significant amount of money. I went hungry those nights.
Those are 200.
Now, afterwards, what you are going to do is you're going to take the brain of the beaver and mix it with water to create a slurry or a paste. You're going to be rubbing that up and down this side of the pelt. Once you have done that, you're going to stretch the beaver pelt over a willow poop and leave it there to dry. What that does is that it softens the fur, softens the pelt, makes it a lot more malleable, and helps to preserve it for overseas shipping, bring it over to the markets in Europe.
So what we're going to do with these hides once we have them processed, and this is a long time and a lot of effort, we're going to put them in 90-pound bales. And they stand about this high, and it's your job as an engagé, which is a man who's kind of like summer help, to carry those bales into the canoe, because water transport's the easiest way to carry a lot of goods. And we're going to take them to the trading post like here. So the canoes would be coming up the Grand River, and they would drop them off at the trading post. And in return for that, what would they get? The trappers. Goods. Because the frontier doesn't have a lot of money. So what we would do, they might trade for powder and ball, they might trade for a knife, or they might trade for hawk, any of those goods. Then the furs are processed, put into the bales, and then they're taken in big canoes called freighter canoes to a port, and we're actually talking about somewhere like Montreal or Quebec. And then what do they do with them, John?
So, once those furs are brought over to Montreal and Quebec, and forgive me if I mess this up, I am still an apprentice, I am still learning. They are traded for...
They'd be traded for money there.
Yeah, they'd be traded for money there. Right. I believe there was also, somewhere in the process, trade sticks as well. Is that correct?
The trade sticks were actually at the post.
Those would be at the post.
Yeah, and this was the Native Americans. That was the cannon, it's fine. We're good.
Duck and cover.
Yes, duck and cover.
They did that over there.
Yes, we're going to shoot here too. Go ahead. I need someone to give me a 5-minute warning, by the way. Top hats. And beaver was popular until like the 1830s, when silk was imported from China, and they went to silk top hats instead of beaver top hats.